So you might have information on origin, on provenance, or you have specific sustainability properties that you wish to highlight, or you simply want to open up and show who are maybe the other companies working with you to create a product. And then we take that information and tie it to the product, hence the tagging. On the tracing, this is coming from many parties providing information. So seldom you are doing it on your own. You are, of course, working in conjunction with your supply chain partners. And the traceability then comes from that it is clear who has contributed which information, who has maybe validated certain key information. And this is all then traceable across the transformation of a product. And the trust aspect, last but not least, really has two angles to it. The one angle is that the parties accessing the service and providing information are known. So in that sense, they can be viewed as trusted partners. And the second element is that DNV also provides additional validation. So the assurance that a key fact or a key claim has been checked upon is another trust element that we can build into this proposition. So having said that, you then have a full digital passport where your product or your asset is showcased in the supply chain. Let's look a bit at why this is useful and in which sort of areas. So we have, on the first hand, physical supply chains. Minerals and commodities, a little bit what we'll be talking with Hydro about is, where are they coming from? What can it relate to? Then they turn into manufactured products. And you can imagine you see here a car, but it can be medical equipment, it can be food and beverage products, any product really made up of other components, and where there is, a case to be made about who is behind it, under which conditions perhaps this product has originated, are all relevant facts which have increasing value both among B2B buyers and also consumers, of course. Equally interesting is the service side. So in our domain of DNV, looking at certification verification, so we perform audits on-site, remotely, data-driven approaches. But in any case, there are many parties out there validating events, that assets are functioning, that production processes are according to standards. And they can document this digitally on the blockchain straight using this service. And last but not least, also competence and learning. So we have also projects in the learning arena where the institution providing a course, a training, and an exam then can display this examination result and the score on the blockchain. And this is written at the source, and hence it is a trustworthy fact. Now, how does this work? Essentially, there's 4 modules, and I'll start from left to right. So setting up the service is really about creating the data template. So you may have a digital statement. It can be a chain of custody certification statement, or it can be a diploma, like I said. And this is all completely configurable. So if you have 2 data fields or 8 fields, you have 3 sections. You can have the sort of graphical design put into it as you wish. And this is, in a way, the first step. Decide what are we showing and what is the data we need. The second step is issuing it. And here we are really talking about connecting up to Tag Trace Trust as a service. So it's a web-based service. And any normal open production environment can connect then to our API, the connection point. And once it is set up, you then, in a sense, have the automated, let's call it, issuance of these digital documents. So from that sense, it's fully automated. And then the sharing and the checking of authenticity is really about taking this then out to your partners and customers. Anyone can view this information by accessing a QR code, for instance, on the document, which is a unique QR code. And it means that only this document has this QR code and is therefore completely identified. So you have a digital identity behind this document and asset. And the authenticity is really coming from that anyone can then go to the source of the information, see the links, also see who is behind it, and thereby authenticate what it is. So what you get at the end of this is a digital representation of your physical product, whether it's an asset or a product, and its unique identity stored on the blockchain. I should add, why at all is this on the blockchain? And I'd like to just point out some key elements behind it. Without doing a blockchain course, blockchain has certain characteristics. So the decentralization is one of them. It means that a party, a known party or several parties can contribute this information and then put it into the setting that they wish. The timestamping is really about knowing who is behind, when do they provide it, and who has done it. And the transparency comes, of course, from all this information is lifted, it's made visible to the supply chain at large, and used to promote products and services in a transparent way. A question we often get is around the energy usage of blockchain. There are, various ways blockchain platforms work. We are using the proof of authority, which means that there are identified nodes in the blockchain network, and only a small fraction of those nodes which have servers are identifying and validating transactions. So it means that this is not the entire computational power at work, but just a micro portion of it. This is unlike, proof of work, which under other things, the Bitcoin technology uses, where all computational power is at work to validate, in a way competing to solve the sort of cryptographic transaction. Hence the high energy use. And I think it's just since we are in a session about how we use digital technology and also talk about sustainable product claims, it's important to make this note. Now I'd like to hand over to our friends from Hydro, who will take us through their talk and their case around lifting and information down the value chain. So Bjørn Kjetil, the word is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, and thanks to all of you who have joined the seminar to listen in. Let me just provide you a small background on why this is important to us and why we are working together with DNV on this, because Hydro, we are an integrated aluminium company, and that means that we are active in all the parts of the value chain. So starting with the mining activities, going on to the refining activities, energy production, primary production, cast houses, and then on the downstream side as well. And from a sustainability and transparency perspective, it's really important, and we're in a good position that we are integrated, because that means that we have we have a lot of information that customers might require in-house. We seldom have to go externally to try to extract sustainability data for transparency purposes. And we have been focusing on the transparency on sustainability issues for a long time. We published our first environmental report in 1989, so we have been reporting on this for more than 30 years. Of course, over those 30 years, the scale and scope of our sustainability reporting has, of course, increased, and we are now reporting on much more than we did in 1989, and I'm sure we will probably report on more parameters in 30 years' time as well. But this is at the core of our business, and we are, in a situation where we actually welcome all questions regarding sustainability issues along our value chain. If we move on to the next slide, please. And one important, we are talking a lot about different providing information on different sustainability issues. One, of course, now the most important now is probably on carbon footprint, on greenhouse gas emissions. But other parameters or issues will, as I said, become more important going forward. But one very important issue for us to convey to customers that aluminium is not just aluminium, so to speak, at least not from a sustainability perspective. Aluminium is a special material when you compare to other metals like copper, steel, and so forth. And the key kind of differentiator is that there is a huge spread or difference in the carbon footprint of aluminium. The global average of aluminium when it comes to carbon footprint is 16.5 kilos CO2 per kilo aluminium. But if you produce it using renewable energy, you're down to between 3 and 3.5 kilos CO2 per kilo aluminium. Of course, that cannot be seen in the metal. It doesn't affect the quality of the metal, and that's why it's important for us to convey the low footprint that we are able to produce. And if you look at this graph, I will not go into all the details. You see that the most important contributor to the CO2 footprint of aluminium is on the energy side. So you can have, if aluminium is produced by purely coal-fired power, the footprint could be as high as 20 kilos CO2 per kilo aluminium. If you only use renewable, like we are doing, for instance, in our Norwegian smelters, we use hydropower, and now also a significant part of our smelters are supplied by wind power. The footprint from the electricity consumption is 0, and we then have a much lower footprint than the global average, pretty much close to one-fifth of the global average. And this is, of course, a message that we are keen to convey to our customers and raise awareness on. And as I said, the most important differentiator is how much renewable energy you are using when you produce aluminium. And this also is reflected in the recycling and the footprint of the recycled products. So if we go to the next slide, I would just like to show you a couple of numbers here. As I said, the global average is 16.5. It can be even high. It can be higher if the fuel source is coal-fired power. We are able to deliver from our renewable-based smelters around 4 kilo, actually a little bit below. But we're also putting other products on the market now. One is called Hydro and Kvaal, where we guarantee that 75% of the metal in the products that we're selling is coming from post-consumed recycled material. And if you look at the left, all the way to the left on the graph, you see what is actually the footprint of 100% post-consumed. When we remelt post-consumed scrap, it's only 0.5 kilo of CO2 per kilo aluminium. And of course, that's much lower than the global average, and it's also lower than what we're able to produce on the primary side. So, and this is why we kind of say that aluminium is very energy intensive in the first phase, but it's also an energy bank because you only use 5% of the energy to recycle when you compare it to the energy you need to produce on the primary side. So I think. And with this project, using blockchain to provide information reliable and fast, this is an important part of our business strategy to differentiate and to help customers, and also to help customers to reduce their footprint, because we are seeing much more focus going forward now on what is the embedded carbon footprint of the products that are sold, and customers are starting to ask about this. I think I will leave it now to Aksel to talk a little bit more about how we work with this, what it means for us. But this was just a background to kind of explain why this is very important to us going forward. Aksel, I leave the floor to you.
Thank you, Bjørn. So the strategic direction for Hydro is to first strengthen our position in low carbon aluminium, but then also explore opportunities and invest in recycling and new renewable energy solutions. A part of this is also then exploring energy storage systems that are enabling the transition to the greener economy. We have initiated this pilot project on blockchain with DNV to increase the transparency for our customers. The ambition is to explore the use of digital passports through the use of blockchain technology, and the goal here is to enable the end consumer, like you and me, to scan a QR code on the product, be it a bike or a bench or a car, and verify that it is indeed not made at a coal-powered plant. It is made with renewable energy, and the materials are traceable. So a key lever in strengthening our position in low carbon aluminium is to enhance the transparency of the market. Our customers today, they have sustainability ambitions, but we see that they are sometimes confused by all the various offerings, and comparing apples to apples can be very challenging. So we need to back the sustainability claims with transparent and verified data, just like you use an accounting firm to verify and create trust in that your books are not cooked. We use DNV to create transparency in trust in our claims. So how does this look like? Let's move to the next slide to take a look. So this is then an example of a certificate. We store a certificate in the cloud that can be made available for anyone with the link or the QR code. And on this certificate, starting out, we have a smaller scope. We have some basic data, like being able to trace back to the production unit, the time, place, the volumes, batch numbers, all of that can be traced back to the production unit. So if you ride your bike, you can look it up and see that, well, the aluminium was produced at the Karmøy plant in southern Norway. And then, of course, part of this is to add then the sustainability data, be it carbon footprint or the amount of recycled post-consumer scrap. Why are we constantly badgering this post-consumer scrap? What does this word mean? And the reason for that is that we see a lot of different types of recycling, a lot of claims to what is recycling. And we have a clear definition that recycling is when you take something that has served a purpose and you put it back into the value chain. So it's basically you're taking garbage and you're making something useful of it. So that's what we mean by post-consumer scrap. And then on the certificate also we add the certifications that we have. We have a verification statement stating that our process is audited by DNV, a third party, and we are a proud member of the Aluminium Stewardship Initiative. So we put that on the certificate as well. And let's move to the next slide. So what are the products and brands that we want to create trust in? Well, we have mainly two brands, which Bjørn touched on. We have Hydro Reduxa. It's a low carbon brand that where we are including, for those of you familiar with the greenhouse gas protocol, we're including scope 1, 2, and 3. And this means that we are taking into account the whole value chain. And this is one of the pieces of the puzzle we see is challenging, that different producers in different industries, not only aluminum, are disclosing different parts of the scope. We think that the all-in approach is the right approach. So that's why we do that for Hydro reduction. And then we have Hydro Circal. It's a recycled aluminum brand playing into the circular economy. And here we are adamant that this is about post-consumer scrap. It's not the manufacturing scrap, not your own waste you generate while you create products. It is taking it back after you and me, the end consumers, be it a facade, a bike, a car. You pick it apart, you melt it down, and then you use it again. And we certify that that is what you're getting. Then we have environmental product declarations, EPDs. These are all of the above is the EPD, the brands, they're certified by a third party. We're using DNV. So, but that's what we have today. So where do we want to go? Well, we want to engage directly with the conscious consumer. There are consumers out there, I suspect some of them are sitting in the audience today, that are seeking information to make qualified decisions on how to consume. Is that milk carton more environmentally friendly than the other one? Well, it's not so easy to sell. And sustainability, we want to increase the scope of what is sustainability. We acknowledge that sustainability is not only carbon footprint. Carbon footprint is the big number these days. It will continue to be for quite some time, but we want to add on. So, but then we need to know what does the end consumer value. All of this is, of course, in the environmental product declaration, but we want to make it more verifiable through this blockchain technology. And then maybe most importantly is that we want, on where we want to go, we want to contribute to the construction of ecosystems with standardized data. And what do I mean by that? Well, you can trace materials along the value chain linearly downwards, but eventually we want to also include looping back as recycled. And for that to happen, we need a full ecosystem with all the suppliers, producers, and consumers participating, providing trusted data in. And with these current years, the last years, we've seen a challenge of we have different players having different set of facts, be it in politics or in sustainability area, to create a good discussion on what's the next step. We need a common set of facts, and that could be where blockchain technology comes in, where we are creating an ecosystem of standardized data so that we are all discussing with the same basis. Let's move to the next slide. We have our foot firmly planted in the battery space. We have stakes in companies, battery companies like Northvolt and Corvus Energy. We are building an EV battery recycling plant in Hydro in Fredrikstad, outside Oslo. And maybe you have seen that Norsk Hydro is collaborating with Panasonic and Equinor to explore the opportunity to build a battery factory in Norway. And we won't spend much time on this, but what we see in our discussions with the big OEMs, the automakers, is that traceability is key. And we see, when we look at the legislative agenda in Brussels, we see that digital passports for the materials, specifically the batteries, will be possibly a must-have. So we need to, this is part of the initiative to prepare for the future and build these systems. And then lastly, I'd like to round off. So let's jump to the next slide. So maybe you saw this article, some of you, that NRK published in February, where an NTNU professor, he was surprised that his battery was probably made with coal power in China. This is, we want to enable you to have the information readily available so that you know where the products are coming from. And this is the mission we're on, and we think blockchain technology can be a critical piece of that puzzle. So rounding off with the next slide, we want to explore what blockchain technology can do to increase transparency and trust, and we want to have a common set of facts so that we can enable you to make qualified decisions. With our full value chain from mine to metal, and collaboration with DNV, a world-leading trust builder, I think we're in a good position to lead this charge. And this is then part of why we changed our MO for Hydro to building industries that matter. So then back to you, Sven.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bjørn Kjetil and Aksel. So this was very inspiring, and I think we sort of could summarize and then see how is the outlook and what's sort of next. So we've seen from start to finish, in a sense, lifting information from mining to metal, as was the term used by Aksel. And you see it's sort of in a B2B setting, for instance, this is a first step, collating information from start to finish. You can also see that the B2B information can be taken one step further to the B2C level, so facing the consumer, so brands that produce services and products which are then ultimately consumer facing, they would benefit or will benefit from taking the information which was sort of upstream. So here I think we see room for more. Also touched upon has been the ecosystem. So you could think of a supply chain in two ways, a kind of a one-way sort of track or alley, where it's sort of a linear thing and you go from one stage to the other. Here we're looking at a more sort of ecosystem reversed also. So we have a full two-way journey, taking from the birth of a material into a product. There's the usage, and then it's the recycling and reverse logistics connected to that. And for many products, whether it's sort of hardware or even can be food waste or recycling packaging, this is valid. And I think you can appreciate the power then behind a digital journey reflecting this. Now let's look at maybe the collaboration aspect that was also emphasized by our friends at Hydro. So doing it on your own is fine. And I think we're all seeing that the more parties we can involve and the more stakeholders are, first of all, asking for this information, but also the more companies are able to connect behind this cause and make supply chain information visible, the more powerful this movement will become. And whilst we maybe started sort of at the bottom left with information and traceability, visibility on that, there's two other, let's say, notions I'd like to briefly touch upon, which has to do with the ownership of a given asset, and also values you can essentially tie to a product. And I'd be very pleased to just briefly highlight that with some examples. So information we've covered, that's the left box. Let's talk a little bit about ownership. Imagine you buy a product, a lawnmower, and you pass it on one day to the next person in line. Your lawnmower maybe has a a basic warranty or maybe an extended warranty, but you can also tie that warranty to the product and of course to this solution. So in that sense, you would have in a second life of a product also services like a warranty or any other sort of benefit attached to a product can also transfer and be registered using the same system. In an aluminiums or metal setting, also the notion of ownership is key. You can go from the manufacturer to the trader to the stockist and then to the, let's say, final purchaser. And in all these parts of the journey, also ownership can be registered. And to take maybe a very obvious example these days on vaccinations, the same can apply. So, when was it produced, shipped, arrived at a health service of the country, and ultimately the product, reached a person and was logged as finalized. So I think ownership, as you can appreciate, is key. Now, value. Here we are talking in a recycling setting, perhaps about credits. Just like in some countries, you have a deposit system for bringing back a glass or a plastic bottle. You can have the same attached to this as well. A value can also be coming from sustainability values such as carbon credits or plastic credits if we are talking about ocean plastics. So these are all items we can attach. I even saw a very, I would say, inspiring case recently in the domain of culture and art. So if an album of a music band was issued, and the first 1,000 holders of the album also received a token, which give them right to certain privileges. So you got an access to a VIP concert with beneficial treatment. You can imagine the same for a piece of art, that you get a personalized transcript from the art maker that goes with it. So you can kind of see that by touching or by attaching value components to these type of assets or even a service, you are in a way elevating your product from just being a product to becoming something more engaging. You can engage with your customer, you can create new experiences. And I think this is also part of the exciting moment we are in. Now, a bit conscious of time, maybe we have some questions. I'd like to first of all, hope that you've seen some numerous opportunities that this has brought. I think you can also appreciate how digital and sustainable goes hand in hand. In fact, I think by promoting the use of digital, we can really have more sustainable impact at all levels, whether we are a service company or a product company. So I think I'll hand it over back to Are to see if we have any questions, and should we not have questions, we have a couple sort of on the back side to maybe get a little bit of discussion going. So Are, I think over to you if you would like.
Yes, now we have received quite a few questions. So I'll start off with one for you, Sven. It's a quite general one. It's from which sectors do you see the most interest for this service of Tag Trace Trust?
Yeah, so I think obvious one is the ones we've been talking about today. So commodities, minerals, and secondary products coming from that. I think building materials is quite a big one, and also in the notion of ocean plastics when it comes to recuperation, collection activities, proof of proving what has been collected, when, the volumes, the mass balances, and sort of attaching that to a new product I think are at least the sort of top 4 areas we are deeply involved in right now. But I think it could be 20 or 50 sectors where this becomes, a key proposition. So I'm very eager to see also maybe from the attendees, from their sectors and companies where they see potential. Are?
So we have another one here. It's for Hydro. Perhaps Bjørn Kjetil can answer this one. If someone wants to do a similar project together with Hydro and use Hydro aluminum in their products, do Hydro set any further requirements to the rest of the components of this product, the materials used, their footprint, and so forth?
No, I think we can only focus on our own material. But of course, the more this is relevant because aluminium is often used in products where they also use many other materials. If you think about the car and the building, there are several hundred different types of materials, but we can only provide information on our material and of course, but we also encourage, of course, all customers to ask for these kind of data. But I don't think we're able to demand from a customer that they do exactly the same for all the other materials that they are using in their end products. I'm not quite sure if that was if I understood the question correct.
Yes, I think that's a good response. Another question for Hydro, perhaps Aksel, you can take this one. Through this pilot, what would you say have been the major learning points for the future application of this technology for Hydro in terms of continuing to use this?
Well, I think I'll be a little bit humble here. I think for maybe this comes across as very basic for those of you listening that are well versed in the blockchain world, but I think a key learning here is that blockchain is not a buzzword to be put in your sentence with relation to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. It is more, the potential is vast, and there's a lot of articles that Bitcoin is using a lot of energy, and that's something else. So to be frank, I was a little bit skeptical at first, and I think the key learning here is that the potential is so big, and I think a little bit maybe an analogy could be used, and I might be mistaken when we look back in 10 years, but the internet in the 90s was something a little bit, it wasn't really used to its full potential. It was there for quite a while, and then it was in the 2000s it really boomed, and we were still finding new ways of using it, and I think maybe that's where we will see blockchain in 10 years. Maybe it's a must-have, and it's part of your daily life. We'll see.
And there's another question that kind of is a follow-on on this. It's were there any positive side effects that you did not foresee when you started this journey with DNV to do this?
I don't have anything right off the bat. Sven, maybe you could help me out here.
Yeah, I mean, I think positive side effects. It's besides we have a working relationship with Hydro since a while. I think it has accentuated, the belief in collaboration, right? So not only between Hydro and DNV, but Hydro in its supply chain and us sort of following and being a part of that journey. And I think for DNV, it's just very apparent how in one industry, which we specifically talked about today, how many analogies there are in towards other industries which we also serve and have, of course, many interdependencies in. So I think it's a bit like back to what Aksel said. Blockchain is not about technology. We have a wider mission here, which is to sort of have a sustainable impact overall for business. And then technology is one item, but I mean it's the spirit of, do you want to be a front mover and an open company, and then that requires collaboration, and together you just go further. And I think that's the spirit that we are living up to, and hopefully joining sort of group of companies as well.
Yeah, no, we're pro disclosing as much as possible, and one of the side effects here is that we see if this becomes more standard, and we do see other players jumping on this ship, we are pushing everyone to disclose more, and that is one of our missions. We have been disclosing for quite a while, more than 30 years, as Bjørn made the point of, and we will keep disclosing, and we will disclose more. That's our MO.
Great. Another question here, interesting one for perhaps for Sven. How do you ensure that the loop is closed and at the end of the life cycle, or do we end up with millions of digital files existing for products that no longer exist? For example, for a car.
That's a very good question. No, of course, I mean, I think it's fair to say we already have a lot of, digital waste or a lot of capacity being used for, all kinds of social media activities, etc. I think, of course, there is, something to be looked at when it comes to the use of data. And I think standardization is a big word here. So just like Aksel mentioned, in given industries for product passports or for the EU Green Deal, digital passport, there needs to be some basic principles and maybe also more detailed principles around what it makes sense to collect, to record and log, and how this is done. So I think the sort of the silver bullet to this question is actually standardization, not to have 1,000 ways of doing things, but some streamlined both formats and maybe procedures that will emerge maybe in different industries at different times. But I'm pretty sure that some mainstream movement should come out of it, and with a mix of private initiatives, maybe some regulatory and exchange at that level, that good solutions will be put in place. But it's certainly a challenge, and nothing that is solved right now, right here.
Thanks. Another question that is coming for you guys at Hydro. It's do customers in the downstream, for example, then car makers, demand this type of transparency, and is there a willingness from what you see to actually pay this premium for such products?
Well, we're seeing what we're seeing is that what they are demanding is it's not aligned. So we see among the OEMs, there's each OEM has their set of demands, and we can't meet every demand in every possible way. So we take some positions which we think are high integrity positions, and then we work from there. Of course, getting paid for green, it can be challenging. But it's also, we're doing a lot of educating that there's this notion that if you recycle, it's cheaper because you're using garbage. What we have to tell time and time again is that recycling, that's difficult. That requires innovation, technology, and if it was easy and if it was more cost efficient, it would have already been done. That's capitalism in a nutshell. We're doing things the cheapest way. So if we want to find solutions, we also need to find the paying market, and we are finding that paying market. If you look to Hydro Building Systems, which is a downstream part of the company, they are having quite a bit of success with selling this Hydro Circal for facades. Økern Portal in Oslo, a good example, also used in many other high-profile projects. And this is I'd like to kind of give a handout to the architect. The architects are playing a huge effort here in driving this sustainability, setting demands and really putting it on the agenda. That's kind of a pat on the back to all the architects out there driving this. And they're different from segment to segment. It's come far in the building and construction area, and then the willingness to pay can be a little bit more sluggish in the automotive, but we are achieving that. We're finding paying customers. Absolutely.
Great. There's a lot of questions coming in here, a lot of good ones. The ones we don't manage to answer right now, we will, as I said, answer later. But another one for you, Sven. What does it actually require to interface with this solution from the client's perspective, to input data into this and make sure the APIs or whatever are in place? How does this work?
Yeah, I mean, just really shortly, it's, I think, any open type of production environment, production system, so cloud-based essentially, is capable of that. And then you have an access point which you have to configure, and that is usually quite plain vanilla for IT team or a person, and then that's it. So I think the challenge actually doesn't really lie in that end, but it's, I think, more actually on collating data in the first place. Who are you working with to achieve your supply chain data and get access to that. So I think your own production system or a company's production system using Tag Trace Trust, that is extremely straightforward.
Great. There's another interesting one to round off with, I think, and that is concerning the data and the input here. Who is actually choosing the criteria for what is the sustainability criteria, and what is actually, how is this put in, if you want?
Yeah, I can go first. I mean, there's no law behind this solution. So, I mean, any company that has let's call it a credible claim or claims that it wants to sort of highlight, I think that is valid. Of course, as always, it's down to, is it objectively measurable? Can it be, verified? And in that sense, the claim is then valid, and you can sort of portray that claim. So I think that's an important part.
Adding to that, I think when I showed the example of the certificate, part of that was also benchmarking, that we put in the global average. We choose to compare with that. What you compare with, what is low carbon, that's up for discussion. But I think the first step is to have a common set of facts, so we are speaking the same language, so that the consumer and the end consumer, you and me, can choose. I think that's the first step. So what is green? Who knows? Bjørn?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think right now it's producers or consumers, or producers and consumers together. But I think we will see more regulation on this, and we see this kind of trend in, for instance, the EU. And I think this is very important, because if we take a bit of the macro perspective, if we go, you know, the last 30 years, industry has reduced emissions quite a lot. And this is much due to regulation. And regulation will continue to be important going forward as well. But I think if we're going to reach the 1.5 degree economy, become almost carbon neutral in the EU in 2050, regulation is not enough. And then we would have to kind of, I think the last stretch, the market and the market forces and you know, the pull from consumers will have to be there as well, because when you look at the transition that is needed, it's quite complicated, and regulation is probably too crude alone to fix this. So I think having you know, going down the road, we need some common sets of standards and understanding, and particularly when we're moving into other sustainability criteria beyond carbon, you know, for instance, biodiversity, CSR, water. It's not as easy to measure, and we don't have a standardized way how to kind of how to calculate this. So I think standardization and also, you know, standardization would increase transparency, and if we increase transparency, we can get the help from consumer and the pull from the market.
Thank you. I think with that, we will. I promised you all to round off before the hour, and I think we will round off there. Thank you very much to Aksel, Bjørn Kjetil, and Sven for enlightening us on all this. We will send out the recording and the information deck. We will also answer the rest of the questions. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And you will get our contact information. Please reach out if you have any further questions or want to discuss this in more detail with us. Hope you all have a good day, and thank you for listening in.
Great, thank you very much. Have a nice day, everyone.